We spend our lives feeling frantic, chasing a version of peace that we think only exists on a silent beach somewhere far away. We've been told that to find balance, we have to stop completely. But for many of us, that stillness just lets the anxiety catch up. If we know deep down that true peace is found in the quality of our inputs, the books, the walks, the active refueling, why do we still think balance requires doing nothing? Welcome to the No Vacation Required podcast, where we break down tired traditions and outdated thinking by asking the question, why are we still doing that? It's all about building a life you don't need a break from, being more present and fulfilled, and showing up in a complicated world that needs your voice and unique talents. Kanan, what's your mind share? I know you have a mind share. This one you let leak. We don't always talk about it, as you know, but yeah, you let this one leak because it's been on your mind, and you said, you know what, I'm going to talk about that.
Yeah,
mind share,
because it's all I've been talking about lately.
Yeah.
So something I try really hard to do, is pay close attention to what we're taking in, the content we're taking in, because it can be so detrimental to your mental health. And something we've been seeing a lot about, and frankly, I'm kind of obsessed about, but I also wish I could never see anything about it again, is the whole manosphere stuff and how destructive this kind of content is.
Yeah, I think we've been learning a lot about that. And then I'm totally with you seeing another show that essentially, I don't want to mention it because I don't want to recommend it, but essentially talked about how this guy's buying into all this stuff.
Yeah.
Made him blow a gasket, blow up his life, threaten the lives of countless other people. And when you really look at this, as I know, Kanan, you were talking to me about, like, wow, you just start to believe this content, these podcasts you're listening to.
Yes.
And then it becomes your life and it becomes your religion. And you're right. We all have to be so aware. Yeah, you're on this kind of kick, I know, where you're like, oh, I just want to be so aware of the content I'm consuming, because who knows what's embedded in there or what advertisement.
I think it's important to mention this because we enjoy learning about new things, and even if it's stuff we absolutely don't agree with or condone, it can be interesting to know what's happening out there in the world and be current. But I want to be even better about just saying no to some of this stuff, because the concepts like that are being put out in the manosphere, even if you go in saying, I'm going to learn about this because I don't agree with it, those things still kind of attach to you.
Completely.
They worm their way into your brain. And so my mind share is that I'm trying to be really aware of how much energy and time I give to things that make me feel badly.
Yeah.
Or that give me the ick, and instead focus on things that make me feel great and positive and stuff I'm excited to share with you and things we want to actually incorporate into our life.
Yeah. I didn't realize how well this was going to segue right into this week's topic.
Oh, that always happens.
I'm bummed to say it's the last episode in this growth series, which has been so fun.
Yeah.
So fun to talk about what comes up in our personal and professional life. If you haven't, go back 3 episodes and check out our episode where we talked about freedom, people wanting to travel the world, things like that. We talked a lot about energy management. Then the second episode in this series, we talked about presence and people wanting things like spending more time with loved ones. We got into prioritization on that episode, which was really great. And then in the last episode, episode 3 in this 4-part series, we talked about value, people wanting clarity, people wanting to do something that matters and that aligns with them. So I'm really excited to get in today's, which is people wanting to feel less frantic. And so many of the themes in this episode, as is always the case, touch on themes from other episodes. People just feeling, for the most part, a lot of this all or nothing mentality. Like, I'm totally in it and busy, or I'm doing nothing. thinking about being totally busy. And it's interesting because we had planned, we always plan our series, our 4-pack out ahead of time. And this is something that comes up so much again in our personal and professional world that we had this planned for this episode. But interestingly, just yesterday in our own lives, we made this kind of huge connection between what is ultimately this episode and something that was happening with us. And after a frantic morning, we finally made it out to the mountains, which is something we had wanted to do earlier in the day. Beautiful weather here in Seattle. We had wanted to get out and enjoy the weather. And this thing we'd attached to had taken all this time. And we finally got into the mountains at like 2:00.
Yep.
And Kanan was like, this is what I want to be doing. This is all that matters. So we talked about how this activity we committed to was just a source of frantic energy, the opposite of peace.
Yes.
Which is what we're talking about this week.
The thing that kept us from going to the mountains earlier in the day was really something we only said yes to because it was kind of a dopamine hit. I mean, we knew we weren't going to really enjoy it.
Yeah.
But it also carried the allure of mixing things up in a way. Yeah, a dopamine hit.
Classic Kent and Kanan. How many times do I say this? We can do it. We have the bandwidth. We have the ability. We can help. Boy, here's an instructive thing right here. And then that becomes the reason to do it. And then we have this kind of breakdown moment yesterday, getting to the mountains late. Kanan makes that comment like, okay, this is all I've wanted. And I'm like, well, then we wasted more than half a day. Kanan was like, we didn't really waste it. I think we just committed to this thing. And there's a bit of a feel good attached to it because we can do it. We've got the capacity. We can stretch ourselves. Yeah. And by the way, I love sharing this because it's another example of how you and I go through our own process. This thing we're always talking to other people about and helping other people with. We have tons of these moments, mostly micro at this point, but some big ones too. And this is an example where then on that hike, we realized, wow, this is crazy. We were doing this because it was hitting like dopamine in certain ways, feeling good about being able to do it, being the ones who could show up, participate. But there was nothing to it for either of us.
Yeah.
Beyond that.
That's the thing, because I always try to make clear we all have to do things we don't want to do, things that keep us from literally or figuratively going out to the mountains. And that's being alive. But this was different because we committed to doing something that I think we both knew we didn't really want to do.
100%.
But, I don't want to be dramatic, but, sort of a morbid curiosity or whatever the intention. I know you, listener, can understand, have these times where you do something that it's not the right thing to do, but you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of interested. I'm a little intrigued. I got to go see this thing. And then you're done. You're like, why did I do that? I knew how I was going to feel afterward. And now I'm just frustrated with myself because, if you're like us, I hope you have these feelings. Like, I want more peace in our life. I want more calm. I want more quiet contemplation, walking in the woods and feeling the sun and all these beautiful things that are filling and that are positive. And yet I chose to do something instead of that I knew I wasn't going to appreciate when I was done.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's sort of an interesting thing. And this concept, much like connection, Kanan, you were just talking about, is something so fresh in our minds because we also talked about this tomorrow. We also talked about this yesterday. And it's something that comes up with people so much. And that is when you look at what's making you feel frantic or what's making you yearn for more peace, you realize that a lot of what's happening is kind of a mental noise, right? Like your life is there for you to live regardless of what's happening in your mind, regardless of what's happening with your emotional state. And you don't always have to let that throw you off. So I think of a client who one time was on this track to, quickly, I can't remember if it was a promotion or like a big test or something, kind of a unpleasant thing happened
Yeah.
within his family. It threatened to crumble everything down because it put him in this very understandable emotional state. But the truth is, your life is still happening and you're having this emotional state. It doesn't mean that things have to feel frantic or like they're collapsing.
Yeah.
Unless you let that disordering happen. Now, as in the case of this client, some reordering and all of that was definitely in order and happened. But we always say, peace is there for the taking, no matter what's going on.
Yeah. You don't have to believe those feelings, or you don't have to allow those feelings to become your reality. They can just be passing feelings. This is what we talked about yesterday. I'm going to just barely touch on something that I'll talk about down the road, but I've been healing from a childhood trauma, and it's been a lot of work, really positive work. But I'm at a point where memories will come in or thoughts will come in, and they can be really heavy thoughts. They can really sort of disrupt my emotional state, because I hope you understand from listening to this podcast, we have a really great life and I have a really great emotional state. But these thoughts can come in or memories can come in, and then I'll have this urge to get a little dark or go deep. Now I got to journal about this, and I've got to do the work and blah, blah, blah. And then it sort of brings down my emotional state. And lately, and I'm really excited to talk about this in the future, I've just been noticing those things come in that used to really disrupt my emotional state, or just things that change my emotional state that I would allow to disrupt our life.
Yeah, they'd cling on, understandably.
Yes, and it's fine. That's going to happen for some time. But now I'm at a place where I can see the thought or the memory come in, and I can recognize it and say, I might do something with that at a different time, but I'm not going to let this take over today.
Yeah. So it's a little tricky because, of course, we're not saying when bad things happen, don't let it change you.
Yes.
Right. That's the opposite of what we're saying. It's so, we mentioned this yesterday, and we actually talk about this all the time. It's so Eckhart Tolle, right?
Which is,
you have a choice in how you respond. So of course you need to do what you need to do to deal with whatever disruption, or maybe just won $1 million and that threw a whole, hitch in your plans.
Yeah.
You need to do what you need to do to deal with reality, but you do have a choice to choose how you're going to stack all that up mentally. And of course, your example is so impressive. Recognizing that one is always in an emotional state, it gets kind of comical to bring that awareness to situations. Yet another thing that we talked about yesterday, because of this whole unraveling about this activity we had gotten involved in, and we were like, why are we even doing this? I was telling Kanan that I've been paying attention to my very specific emotional state at times, and I've just been horrified how the brain can start telling you all of these stories about what's going on. I was telling Kanan, in the course of this walk we did whenever, my brain was on the highest high and the lowest low, and worry about this, and do this, and this great thing happened, so pursue that. But yet the reality in front of me was the same through all of those thoughts.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great way to put it. Also, as you put it regarding your trauma, you have a choice to decide, okay.
Yeah, I love that you said peace is always there for the taking. I just wanted to reiterate that, because it really is. In your emotional state, you can recognize what's happening. And when you do recognize what's happening with your emotional state, as Kent, you just said, it's pretty crazy. But it does not have to disrupt your peace. I want to talk about discernment, and I want to go back to my mind share where I was talking about the manosphere and this kind of toxic
Yes.
content that I've been paying attention to.
The lack of discernment
Well,
that
I
you
mean,
learned about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say my own discernment in this case, because as I'm reading about the manosphere or taking in this information, I can recognize in myself that this is feeling pretty icky. And yet there is something about it, a morbid curiosity, maybe, whatever, that compels me to keep learning about this stuff. And so I'm saying I have to have the discernment to say, this is how this is making me feel, and I might be interested in it, and I might be morbidly curious, but I have to have the discernment to say, this is not healthy. This is not right for me. And then I have to stop doing it.
Yeah.
As I have with this content. Let me make it very clear. I'm not like going down I'm not going to get red pilled or something, but I don't like the way something makes me feel. I have to stop doing that thing.
Yeah. So following through with our kind of through line here, you're recognizing your emotional state, what it's doing to you.
Yes.
And in this case, you're just reading about the manosphere.
Yes.
Or watching the documentary about the guy in the manosphere who blew up his world and practically the world. You're recognizing, okay, this is putting me in an emotional state. I have a choice. I have a choice right now.
I have a choice right now. And
Yeah.
and in this case, I'm choosing to pay less attention to that.
Yeah. I
don't want to platform that in my brain anymore.
Yeah. This reminds me of, as you said, we always like to get into tips and helpful things. This reminds me of a recent journal prompt saying it's the proudest advice that you give, that you're able to give yourself, and talk about things we don't talk about nearly enough. So many people's biggest stressors, the things that put them in an emotional state that wounds them, involve other people, toxic family members, toxic friends, toxic coworkers. It's such a common strand. I think about what we've talked about with, it's personality, not personal, for one.
Yes.
People realizing, not everybody's the same as you, number one. Number two, don't make this so much about you, because it may have very little to do with you, what you think this person or these people or your boss or your mom is doing. But as it relates to this episode, the bottom line is the same. You're put in a certain emotional state over and over again by this person or these people. You have a choice with what to do.
Yes.
And we talk so much about getting rid of toxic people in your life. It doesn't matter who they are. Why are you not at least minimizing time with this person who causes so much upheaval to your emotional state? So that's a good example that people can understand easily. Asking yourself, why am I creating this reality by spending time with this person?
Yeah.
I want to point out too here that as it relates to what we talked about in the intro, it's these sort of pressure points, these emotional states, these realities that have you feeling frantic. That's why you are in that mode and headspace, and then you have to completely bedrot or do nothing, right?
Bedrot.
Goblin mode.
Yeah.
Kind of getting back to the core of our intro, which is the reality of so many people we interact with, is sort of like going without peace or the idea of peace until you nearly break, and then stopping, collapsing, shutting it all out, doing nothing really ultimately productive in a generative sense, because then you're just going to go back into it and be crazy and have terrible emotional states that you don't know what to do with until you need to shut down again.
Yes, because then you're shut down, the blinds are closed, and you're in your sweatpants and second screening something mind-numbing, but you're having the existential version of the Sunday scaries because everything that's disrupting your life is still out there.
Yeah.
And you're going to go right back into it. So you do, as you were saying, Kent, you do have to have the discernment to say, I need less of this thing in my life, this thing that makes me upset, this thing that disrupts my emotional state, I have to have the discernment to say, I recognize that something is not making me feel peaceful, which is what I want. And now I have to do something about it. And I can tell you, having done this work myself, both of us having done this work, that when you do make those decisions, when I say, ew, I don't like the way social media makes me feel icky when I'm done, and then I stop doing social media because I've recognized it's not good for my mental health, it doesn't make me feel peaceful. Let me talk about, that's a dopamine hit. When you actually do follow through with your own desire to feel peaceful, that's the gold ring.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think I want to tag on something here because I can hear the emails, we will get, or the clients who will bring this up. This is not that you have to deal with terrible things perfectly or that terrible things don't happen. No, this is not the denial of that reality.
No.
It's that, as I said, and Kanan repeated, peace is always there for the taking. So as an example, a kind of a treacherous example, I think of parents dying. And even in that process where gravity is pulling you toward being in a mode of constant doing and preparing and planning and mourning and grief, we were able to apply this enough to say, this is horrible and this is happening and we have to go through it to get to the other side. But we need moments of peace along the way, right? I've got to get a workout in every morning. I've got to take some time away to just be just us two in the middle of all this devastation. That's what we mean when we say you're recognizing the mental state, and whether what's happening or giving you frantic energy is good, bad, or neutral, you can always find a way to find some peace that will help whatever's happening. As always happens, I thought of this worth the time, live action in this podcast, because something you said at the top about, what were you saying about like dumbing things down or just stupid stuff? I can't even.
We're talking about them. Like,
maybe that's what it was.
Yeah. Talking about the manosphere, or like just consuming content out of a morbid curiosity, or that makes you feel a little like icky.
Yeah. I was thinking about, this conversation we also had recently about the New Yorker, because we watched the New Yorker 100 special, and somebody talking about how there's all this backlash against the New Yorker because it's too pro thought and intellectualism. And so
it's too elite.
I'm going to do a mega worth the time and then a micro worth the time. My mega worth the time is the New Yorker, because they do brilliant, insightful pieces, and we should all be craving more information. They also have a lot of great humor in there, great art. I mean, all sorts of stuff that anybody on any spectrum, male, female, introvert, extrovert, progressive, right wing, whatever, should appreciate. And an example of that is a recent just blockbuster article by Ronan Farrow and another person on Sam Altman and AI.
That was good.
And it's just, no matter your orientation on any and all spectrums, it's just good information that makes you think and actually hones a lot of the things we've been talking about in this episode, namely discernment. So I'm going to give a big recommendation to the New Yorker.
Yes. And I'm going to give you a couple snaps for your anti-intellectualism little diatribe there.
Thanks for listening to the No Vacation Required podcast. For more information, including services designed to help you build a life you don't need a break from, check out novacationrequired.com. And if you found this information helpful, please subscribe.